What's the coolest line a pilot has said to his/her passengers? The captain on a Scandinavian Airlines SAS Flight 1 said, "Ladies and gentlemen, it won't be a full flight today." Captain on a Scandinavian Airlines SAS Flight 1 said, "Ladies and gentlemen, it won't be a full flight today. So could I just ask all passengers who have an aisle or middle seat to move to the window? This way, the other airlines will still think we are successful." Favorite is what the pilot said to me when I was the only passenger on a plane meant for 100 on a flight from Philadelphia to Burlington, VT. Welcome to the Doug Massey Private Airline. We hope you enjoy your flight to Burlington. After we've reached the cruising altitude, I'll turn off the seat belt sign and encourage you to try all the other seats in the cabin and let us know which one you like best. Favorite is what the pilot said to me when I was the only passenger on a plane meant for 100 on a flight from Philadelphia to Burlington, VT. Welcome to the Doug Massey Private Airline. We hope you enjoy your flight to Burlington. After we've reached the cruising altitude, I'll turn off the seat belt sign and encourage you to try all the other seats in the cabin and let us know which one you like best. Early morning trip from Paris to Zurich. Dawn was breaking soon after takeoff from Orly on a rainy autumn day. Went up in altitude for the brief 1-hour flight. Coming down after FA announced the landing, rain began pounding the plane, and the noise level just kept rising. Think summer storm hitting a tin roof. Descending through the clouds, it became darker and darker and darker. Finally, the plane broke through the last cloud layer. It lightened up outside, and we could see the airport. The sighs of relief were audible, and we all looked at each other with weak smiles. Suddenly, the horizontal rain sheeting off the windows decreased, and all looked well. The pilot lined up on the runway to land. At about 200 feet, we hit a heavy crosswind, turning the plane almost 20 degrees. It got worse quickly. Every passenger was looking out the left side windows, since that's where the runway appeared. The plane was landing sideways. The heavy rain picked up again, sheets of it coming from every direction. Suddenly, it felt like the Jolly Green Giant slapped the top of the plane, causing us to instantly drop about 20 feet in altitude. Amazing thing happened, total silence from us all. Not a peep as we all white-knuckled the armrests. Then the pilot straightened the plane, but a new crosswind kept turning us sideways, now going in the other direction. Wings waggling up and down. The pilot was working the controls, fighting to bring it back to the center. Once he got it back, the pilot just dropped the hammer through the last 50 feet of altitude, slamming the plane down hard. While jets roared from reversed engines, the pilot rocked it down the runway, standing on the brakes until we finally maxed out near the end of the tarmac. Nothing on the intercom. No emotions, total silence. A full 10 seconds while we all just looked at each other blankly. This is the captain speaking. Why they pay me the big bucks all at once. The applause started. Whoops, booyahs, rebel yells all filled the cabin, along with the receding smell of fear. Or perhaps that was all the wet crotches. Added July 16th, every landing that you walk away from is a good landing. If you can reuse the plane, it was a great landing. David Sampson, quoting from a comment here by David Sampson, an air traffic controller for 30+ years. Excellence at his job keeps us all safe for 24/7/365. We had just lifted from Newark. The pilot's voice said, "Well, it seems my co-pilot left his toothbrush back at the airport, and I'm afraid we have to turn back and get it." Sensitive about these things, we felt the plane pivot 180 degrees, fly a bit. Then he came back to the PA. "Well, we found the co-pilot's toothbrush, but we also have a shattered windshield." This was on a flight from Mumbai to Delhi. Typically, Indian pilots do not talk or interact much with the passengers. As the aircraft was preparing for takeoff, there was an altercation between two people which created considerable noise in the flight. The cabin attendants eventually had to intervene and solve the mess. Once we were airborne and cruising, the pilot came online and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, hope you are having a good flight." As we were readying for takeoff, I hear that there was a fight between two passengers. This is not healthy at all. I would like to remind you all that once the aircraft doors are closed, only one person gets to keep their ego, and that's me. For the rest of you, please keep your egos away when flying. This literally made all the passengers chuckle. I heard this one on a Virgin Airlines flight. This is the captain speaking. "Welcome aboard our flight to Sydney today. You'll be pleased to know that Virgin Airlines has the 3 best cabin crew members flying anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, they're on another flight today, so you're stuck with Stacy, Daryl, and Petra." It was the summer of 1984. I was 9 years old. I had just finished the summer term of my second year of primary school in the UK, and I was flying back home to West Africa with my mom. My passport photo back then, taken when I was a little younger. I was at that age where most kids become aware of their cuteness factor and how to milk its effects on adults. Back then, flying was still considered to be a pleasurable activity. Seems almost laughable now, and our British Airways flight was at something near 25% capacity. We were about to fly over the Sahara, and I had been pestering my mom all through the flight to let me ask our hostess if I could go and meet the captain. Anyway, after several minutes of additional whining, she relented and asked the hostess if I could go up to the cockpit. A cuteness factor thing to go into effect, so, between my big saucer eyes and pearly whites, I managed to charm the hostess into letting me go up. I can't honestly say that I remember all that much about being 9 years old, but I will never forget what it felt like to stand in the cockpit of a Boeing 757 watching the aquamarine of the Mediterranean melt into the beige rust of Sahara Desert. Then out of the captain's mouth came the most amazing sentence I'd heard from an adult, like ever. "Would you like to tip the wings?" That did it. Officially, this had now become at least one of the top 3 experiences I'd ever had. In retrospect, I still think getting a lightsaber and BMX just topped this one out. The captain first explained how the yoke worked to control the pitch and roll. He then demonstrated how to tip the wings by slightly moving it to the right and then left. "Okay, your turn. Just tip them a bit." I turned it to the right half a degree and felt the world gently shift under my control, then back to the left, and the world corrected itself. To say I was pretty blown away by all this is understatement. I remember thanking the captain and following our hostess back to my seat. Afterwards, I remember being really quiet for the rest of the flight, something that rarely happened unless all expectations, real and imagined, had been exceeded. I haven't thought about that day in a while, but it always brings a smile to my face when I do. I wonder if anyone else has had similar experiences in their youth. About halfway between London and Paris on Christmas Eve, the pilot came on the PA with an announcement. "Ladies, gentlemen, and especially children, I've just seen Santa and his reindeer pass by our aircraft and waved to me. If the children will look out your windows now, you might still get to see him. I'm not a child, but I still look." Oh, that's an easy one. In 1982, British Airways Flight 9 from Singapore to Australia flew next to an erupting volcano near Indonesia, and ash shut down all 4 of the 747's engines. The captain, in inimitably perfect British stoicism, said over the PA, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a small problem. All 4 engines have stopped. We are doing our damnedest to get them going again. I trust you are not in too much distress." Istanbul to Copenhagen, Turkish Airlines. After safety procedure demonstration, the lead flight attendant concluded by saying, "Please ensure that you all have tightly fastened your seat belts, as the captain of our flight today is a lady, if you know what I mean." That brought a smile on everybody's face. About an hour into the flight, we went through a very violent turbulence, waking everybody up. Few minutes after getting stabilized, the PA system buzzed. "My bad, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking." I was distracted while applying lipstick in the rear view mirror. All the passengers burst out laughing. The rest of the flight was peaceful. Later during the landing, due to the strong crosswinds, our plane kept swaying sideways. All of a sudden, we dropped on the runway with a back-breaking bang and then bounced a few times. People began panicking as everything was shaking as hell, and it was all very noisy. After shuddering for what felt like a decade, the speed reduced slowly. There was a pin-drop silence before the PA system came online. "Whoa, that was pretty rough, huh? A good day to wear that push-up bra, isn't it, ladies?" Needless to say, the whole cabin erupted in applause and laughter. On a flight from Washington, D.C. to Chicago, U.S. Air, 1996, we got caught in a crazy violent storm that came out of nowhere. The turbulence was making the plane drop 5 to 6 feet and came in waves. At some point, the flight attendants asked everyone to lower their shades as we headed in for the landing. People were screaming and crying with every drop and roll. I was holding onto my seat as the plane descended and decided to peek out the window. As I opened the shade, I saw the lights of the runway right out my window, not to the side, right in front. That meant we were coming in for a landing sideways. The screams intensified as we neared the ground. We bounced along the runway, and the plane made a horrible noise as we finally skidded to a stop. Finally, silence. Pilot comes on the intercom. Alaska Airlines from Portland to Sacramento. "Thank you for flying Alaska. I'm your Captain XX. And together with my co-pilot Yai, we will be flying you to Sacramento today. Your cabin crew are Stacy and the brown-haired one. Cabin crew, shortly after. While our captain's coffee is cooling down in the fridge, we will be serving you drinks and refreshments shortly. In case you're wondering, that was lightning that hit the plane. I had been wondering. About 20 minutes earlier, there was an incredibly loud crack and a bright flash of light that made the whole plane shake. It was scary for a moment or two, but then everything quickly returned to normal. The pilot didn't tell us it was lightning until after he had safely landed the plane. Once, on a very stressful flight from Logan Airport in Boston to Houston, Texas, I was having a minor nervous breakdown. Traveled for a living 10 months out of the year doing a job that I loved, working at a company I owned, and making a lot of money. After a few weeks in Boston, where I was having a great time, I snapped. I called my client, quit my contract with no notice, got a ride to the airport, and flew home. On the flight, I turned off my phone and slipped it into the pocket of the seat in front of me. It was a long, crowded flight home, during which I cried the entire time. No one noticed that I was in emotional turmoil. I just climbed into my head and prayed for the plane to fly faster so I could get home and crawl into bed. Usually, when a flight lands, I am first off the plane. I travel light. But when I went to get my phone, it was gone. I looked everywhere for it. I thought I might have dropped it. I looked between the seat cushions. I looked in my backpack. No phone. By this time, everyone had departed, and I was still sitting in my front row seat freaking out. A flight attendant came over, and I told her I couldn't find my phone, so she helped me look. Pretty soon, all the flight attendants were looking. The phone had just vanished. I felt awful keeping all these wonderful people from leaving the plane. I started to cry again, and I told her that I was having the worst day of my life, and I couldn't leave without my phone. She said, maybe you dropped your phone, and it slid under the seats during the flight. After a few minutes, the captain came to my row and sat down. He could see how upset I was. He talked to the flight attendants, then he got down on his hands and knees and crawled the entire length of the plane looking for my phone. After about 15 minutes, he came and sat down next to me. Very calmly and gently, he asked me to start from the beginning and tell him what happened. I told him that I turned my phone off and dropped it in the seat back in front of me, and now it was gone. He then reached into the seat pocket and took everything out. My phone was not there. Then, as he was returning everything back to his place in the seat back pocket, from between the pages of an in-flight magazine, out drops my phone. I was mortified. I held up the entire staff just because I couldn't find my phone. I wanted to run off the plane. I was so embarrassed and so grateful, and I was crying even more, thanking them over and over. All that the pilot said was this: it's against airline regulations for the pilot to leave the plane until every passenger is safely off. And I wasn't going to leave till I knew you felt safe. I have never been so grateful in my life. Update: I want to thank everyone who has commented on my story. Well, except the guy who graded me like he was my high school English teacher. So, to the people who think I got special treatment because I was an attractive female, you couldn't be more wrong. Actually, I looked like shit. I was having a nervous breakdown. I was wearing baggy wind pants and an old beat-up hoodie that I had from high school. No makeup, hair, and a ponytail. I could have passed for homeless that day. Why is it so hard for people to believe there are kind people in this world? And lastly, I was flying on American Airlines, and I've been a loyal customer since that day. That's the end of our show today. Don't forget to like and comment if you enjoyed the show. Be sure to subscribe for new content every day.